Hello, and welcome to edition of Eye on Mattison. I am your host, Laverne Murphy. And of course, our village president, Sheila Chalmers Curran, is the executive producer of the show for Eye on Mattison. On today's show, I do have with me Dr. Jeffrey Sterling. He is the CEO of Simcoe. Simcoe is the nation's first managed preventive care organization launched earlier this year in an effort to provide solutions for dramatic healthcare access problems, including lack of resources and information for better treatment options. Hello, Dr. Sterling. Thank you so much for coming on our show, Eye on Mattison.
It's great to be with you.
Great. Thank you so much. Can you share with us just a little bit about your background?
Native Chicagoan, born in Cook County. Actually did my emergency medicine training at Cook County as well. What do you want to know? There's so much to talk about. I'm a physician. I'm a public health professional. I'm a healthcare entrepreneur, all around good guy, author, blogger. I do many different things. We can talk about whatever you like.
Wow. Well, you're certainly an individual that wears a lot of hats. So great accomplishments for certain. So this organization in which you've launched earlier this year that focused on preventive healthcare measures, what gave you the motivation to launch such an organization that you've done?
Well, one of the hats that I wear is that I also have run a healthcare implementation and consulting firm for about 15 years. And it's global. I do work all over the world. I've worked on 5 continents, and I've produced healthcare solutions for any and many different types of governments, corporations, and individuals. I think that at some point in time, it would behoove you to look internally, this is home obviously, and to just stop being disgusted with the state of affairs that we find ourselves in, meaning the disproportionate levels of care and disproportionate outcomes that exist. We call those things healthcare disparities, and to really look inward in terms of trying to help our own. And really, the ways in which I've developed expertise and been able to help others is at a certain point of your time, something that you really want to dedicate to my community, my hometown, my state. And I've really been able to amass an all-star team within the state to simply look to implement what we call public health best practices and to put all of those things under one roof. So typically what ends up happening is that your medical home, your primary care doctor, and your managed care organization, your insurance company, deals with the concerns that you have once you get sick. So we call that sick care. But as you've heard many times, an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure, and that actually means something, and it's actually applicable in health. So there are no preventive health organizations. There are no health promotion organizations. There are no public health practices in the way in which there are medical practices. So these are the things that we're looking to do, and we're looking to really transform the focus on care of the citizens of Illinois and elsewhere around the world away from sick care and more toward health promotion and health prevention. So that's the name of the game. And let me describe it this way. Very often, think about what it is you actually do for all the money you're paying for your insurance. You see a doctor once a year or twice if you're lucky. And 364 days the rest of the year, you're kind of left to your own devices unless you have something really bad happen and you have to go to the emergency department. We begin the conversation under the premise that you need to become a better steward of your own healthcare. We want to engage communities. We want to educate communities. We want to empower communities so that you can become a better steward of your own health. The name of the game is all about self-care, um, health, self-empowerment, because knowledge is health. So we're actually going to be working up and down the state, providing that level of education and empowerment in a very hands-on way. We're looking to engage communities, to empower communities and educate communities. This is qualitatively different than the paradigm that has existed. And we simply want people to look and think about their health, to prioritize it in the way in which we haven't done traditionally or historically.
Right. Absolutely. And you definitely have a big task ahead of you for sure. So, especially now that COVID has really brought healthcare issues to the forefront more so than ever before. You have individuals that are becoming more in tune or reevaluating their health. On the other hand, you have the individuals where, living healthy has limitations. And I think that's where your organization comes into play. So, what other mechanisms can be brought into the equation to help you out in your efforts? What other things need to happen in order for there to be more understanding, more resources and outreach so that individuals can choose to have, better health care so that there isn't this social and economic divide, which we're seeing, which has really put the spotlight on healthcare disparity with COVID-19?
Well, we're not creating a nanny state. We're not going to beat people up and to shame them into doing better for themselves. We're really just
Absolutely.
looking to provide them with information. And the premise here is that if you know better, you'll do better, and then you'll be better. So we're going to unleash about 1,000 people across the state into communities beset by healthcare disparities. And we think it's going to be a self-evident truth that if we focus and provide people with accurate information, they'll know what to do. And this is what's been missing. We just haven't had the types of conversations around health that are needed, particularly in our community and in other communities that have always been short. We were, if you actually look at the fact that, before Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, was implemented, there were about 50 million Americans that didn't have health care. And now we're somewhere around 20 to 25 million who still don't have health care. And you can imagine what the constitution of those 20 to 25 million people are. We have problems with access to care, quality to care, and cost of care. And if that's the case, we need to be better empowered to work within our means, to work within our access. And we have many incentives, including survival, to help us overcome and to do for self in a way that we need to do simply
Mhm.
because the powers that be have proven, and this is a centuries old phenomenon. This isn't something new. COVID-19, you mentioned that. That's just a symptom. That just demonstrates what happens when the public health system gets stressed. The real disease is racism and institutional racism at that. So while we continue to advocate for more equitable delivery of healthcare in the United States, we have to become empowered to control our own existences and to do things that are within our power. So people just need to avail themselves of education and to learn to value their lives. Live fast and die young sounds good until you start dying young. And the
Mm.
situation that we're here is that there's going to be a significant amount of peer pressure in our community as we transform our priorities away from some of the nonsense that the stereotypes would have you think about us and what the data actually says about us, to where we actually become part of our better selves. And we will illustrate that in this example by the way in which we transform ourselves and embrace health prevention, health promotion throughout our communities. And that will, combined with the economic empowerment components of Simcoe as well, will really do a lot to transform our community and to set us up for a better existence.
Great, great. So you speak a lot about, empowerment and self-care. Give us some examples of best practices and how we can empower ourselves and take care of ourselves. So what are some of those mechanisms which we can use?
Well, the great part about this conversation is that it's actually quite simple. There's a saying that you have to say the same thing 1,500 times before people really get it. And we're going to be
Mhm.
doing that. In a
Yeah.
word, this is about dieting, exercising, getting screenings, and engaging your medical home. Implementing things is a hell of a lot more difficult than knowing what to do. I mean, obviously, everybody knows what to do, right? You just go to a water cooler, people will
Exactly.
tell you all day, every day. but actually chasing it down the rabbit hole to its completion in a satisfying way is what the challenge is. And here's a simple construct. Everything you put in your mouth either hurts or helps you.
Mhm.
That's
That's
way
right.
more profound than it just sounded. But in our community, it's the difference between learning to embrace drinking 8 ounces of water versus a 12-ounce can of pop. Think about the incremental benefit to our health if we simply made that one change. And I can roll off a dozen different equally beneficial things, but really it's
Mhm.
just a point of saying we can actually show healthcare outcomes that are improved just on the basis of doing that one type of thing. And it's not about doing a challenge on social media or something like that. It's really about lifestyle changes.
That's right.
The goal here really is to impart lifestyle changes upon a community and to have them be better by knowing better and doing better. And, instead of talking about um, exercise, because a lot of people will say, well, I can't afford a gym or I don't live near a gym. Well, again, we'll talk in terms of activity, keeping it moving. Every activity that you engage in improves your heart conditioning to some level. There's a gold standard, but this isn't a net zero consideration where it's either or. We can get you to where it is you want to be. And by the way, Simcoe will literally have a half a dozen different health and human service centers in different parts of the state that'll be community gathering sites where we will provide places where you can come gather, where you can come do the things that you will say that you
Mhm.
can't do where you currently don't have the opportunities to do these things. So we're going to just keep it simple, but we're going to drill deep and make sure that the name of the game is implementation. And
Mhm.
as these things go, we can produce better outcomes, and we actually will document that.
Okay, great. One of the biggest factors that is driven or drives our health down is stress. Stress can really take a toll on someone's health. What are some preventive measures, or how can people better cope with stress, especially during these times when, the stress level is higher than normal? So, what are some of the practices that individuals can take heed to?
Well, I could talk all day about that. That's a separate series of conversations all by itself, but I'm going to make it simple for you.
Mhm.
Stress isn't the situation that you're presented with. Stress is not knowing to do with the situation with which you're presented. Okay?
Mhm.
See, I'm dropping knowledge. I want you to think about that. That's going to hit you later tonight. But the truth of the
Okay.
matter is that, I'm an emergency physician. So I have people trying to die all day, every day. Now, I could run up and down the hallway screaming, or I can put my gloves on and say, let's go to work because I know what to do. This is once again, and you're going to hear me say the same things again and again because it's all about implementing some very simple constructs. If you actually are empowered to know what to do and you're educated about knowing what to do, then you'll
Mhm.
learn how to deal with the situation. Here's something that's funny about stress. Stress actually occurs on a bell-shaped curve. And that means that if you apply a certain amount of stress to an individual, their performance actually improves. Okay.
Mhm.
So there's a thing called a stress performance curve. It's only when there's an excessive amount of stress relative to your capabilities that it becomes stifling and choking. Once again, a heart attack is the same is a different level of stress, but it actually is the same force that, if applied at a lower level of stress, makes your body healthy, right? So if you run a mile a day, you are in great shape. If you run 20 miles once, you'll probably pass out unless you are a marathoner and have trained for that. So we
Mhm.
have to rethink the concept of stress and how we allow it to be applied to us. The things that beset our community, such as poor dietary habits, we live in food deserts. So it's stressful for kids to have to eat Cheetos and pop for breakfast. Well, we want to do something about that type of situation. We can improve our environments, we can improve our values, and we can improve our options. Not necessarily easy, but we have to think in terms of that. We have to move away from any inclinations that we have toward victimization and replace that with a piss off activity concept to where we just say, I'm not going to accept this anymore. And we're going to accept responsibility for doing better for ourselves. Even if it's not our fault, it's our responsibility because ultimately we're the ones that will suffer. We can sit here and complain all day about the fact that COVID-19 is killing 70% of African Americans in the city of Chicago. Or we can say, okay, what is it that we can do to empower ourselves to remove ourselves from the environment that creates that statistic? That really is the mindset that you have to think through. And that actually is your best stress reducer time and time again. Remove yourself from environment or improve your ability to cope with the environment. Very
Hmm.
powerful tools.
Absolutely, for certain. So, can you tell me what is the biggest, I guess, subconscious habit that people tend to get that leads to poor health in the future or impacts their health in the future? Does it drill down to our choices of food? What is that, or are there several components? What is that number one driver of bad habits that really impact our health?
Well, I'll literally answer the question that you asked. The number one is food. Everything you
Mhm.
put in your mouth helps or hurts you. And actually, people always talk about, I'm going to go, when you want to get healthy, what is the first thing people say? I'm going to join the gym. I'm going to get a personal
Exactly.
trainer. No,
Mhm.
no, no, that's wrong, actually. Food is about 75% of the conversation, right? Think about it. Garbage in, garbage out.
Mhm.
If you don't put the garbage in to begin with, then you don't have to clean up the mess as much. And exercise, to some extent, not only conditions your heart, but it does so because it's necessary to remove all the toxins that you put into your body to begin with. So if you actually ate more healthy, and let's think about it. If you actually looked at the um, populations around the world that had the life expectancies, they don't have 24-hour fitnesses hanging out in in wherever they live, but they are
Mhm.
vegetarians. They do pay very close attention to um, healthy foods that they're eating, and they engage in regular activity, not necessarily exercise. So these things are not um, secrets. We know what to do. We
Mhm.
just don't implement the strategies, and we're not consistent in doing them.
Mhm. And sometimes it's just a matter of someone validating what you're already thinking in order to make that move, even though a lot of times we do know what to do. So it
Sure.
helps coming from experts such as yourself to kind of validate what we're thinking. So, what
Well,
would you
you need
say?
somebody sitting on top of you as well, too, because that helps.
Right, absolutely. So, what would you say to those individuals who you talk about food deserts or whatnot? What would you say to the individuals who may not have resources to healthy food choices because of the food desert? How can individuals become more proactive or more empowered with the limitations that are there to become more health conscious?
That's a false dichotomy. Once again, it's not I have healthy food choices or I have to eat garbage. There's always the option of healthier food choices. See, that's the trick bag. We all know that Taco Bell and Cheetos and all that stuff is engineered to get us addicted via the crunch, the taste, all of that. And we have to, figure this out. At every budget, there are ways to eat healthy. Once again, I'll take you to communities around the world that have very long lifespans who base their diets on things that grow out of the ground. There's rice and there's potatoes and there's many things that you can do that aren't expensive. You don't need a 5-course meal at an expensive restaurant to eat delicious and healthy food, but you do have to make the commitment to figure out what you can do within your means. It is an act of exercise, and you have to take the first several steps to become educated on what to do, to be empowered, to have confidence to do it, and then consistent in how you continually implement those strategies. It's not easy. And it would be nice if there were Whole Foods or some equivalent here, there, and everywhere, but that's not the hand that we're dealt. And we just kind of have to accept that in the short term and figure out what it is we can do within our means, because we can't just say, oh, well, there's no Whole Foods. I'm going to McDonald's breakfast, lunch, and dinner 5 times a week.
Hmm. Absolutely. So, also one of the things that you touched on too for preventive healthcare measures. So, for others that are out there that are seeking better healthcare, they may not have a healthcare provider. And sometimes it's the unknown, not feeling comfortable with the selection. How can an individual, what can they look for? What type of questions can they ask in order to have that comfort level with seeking a provider, healthcare provider, to help them in the future where if it's not there, the comfort level, the chances are individuals just tend not to go.
Well, let me take a detour on your question and just point out that one of the things that Simcoe is going to be doing is to really focus on helping patients qualify for various forms of insurance. Because, I would tell you at the beginning of the conversation is that there are a lot fewer individuals than you think that are not eligible for any type of health insurance, regardless of your ability to pay. So once again, you tell me, when was the last, and I'm speaking theoretically to people out there that don't have health insurance, when was the last time you literally spent an hour trying to find out through healthcare.gov or some other mechanism if you qualified for care? People don't do that. They just kind of assume that they don't qualify and that they show up at an emergency department, which is the most expensive portal to obtain health care. And oh, by the way, the number one cause of personal bankruptcies in the United States is hospital bills. So you don't want to wait until you get sick to enter into the system. So it's an active exercise. Instead of watching reruns of whatever you've seen 5 or 6 times already, spend an hour, do something for yourself, try to figure out. It's a simple Google. Go to healthcare.gov and figure out how you can qualify. The next time there's an enrollment period for Obamacare, get on it. But help is on the way in this example because, as I mentioned, Simcoe really is going to be active in the communities around the state, matching people with the resources that do exist. Knowledge is power, and a lot of us don't know how to take that first step. So we're not blaming folks for doing it. We're just encouraging people to take the time to find out how to do it. And even if you go to the emergency department, you really shouldn't leave the emergency department without asking them the question. I don't want to leave and return into the same conditions that produced the problems that I'm having right now. So emergency departments, urgent care centers, they all have resources by which they can refer you to primary care doctors that accept patients of a certain ilk, of a certain financial status. And every time you have an opportunity to ask someone to do that, you should be taking advantage of it. You know, if you're a citizen of Cook County, you should be calling somewhere inside of county government to figure out, it isn't just Cook County Hospital or Provident. Well, what's the network for me to get health care on the primary care side of things? And all of that is in the realm of possible, but people literally have to say, you know what, I'm going to take an hour today and try to find myself some health care on the primary care side. And, you know, if you take 1 hour doing that, then I also want you to make sure that every time you put something in your mouth, you stop and think, do I really need to do this? You know,
Right.
those pops are 120 calories, 150 calories per pop in water. Last time I checked, it's still 0 calories.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
next time somebody's wondering how they can lose weight, that adds up quite rapidly. Very easy way to start.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think you hit some vital points, you know, about resources because you don't know what you don't know. And having your facility out there, you know, in the community now, being able to provide resources in which individuals can tap into, you know, it opens up the door where individuals can become more empowered with their health. You know, having someone there or links and resources in order to tap into to make that happen. So, you know, we talk a lot about our health. You know, we talk about a lot about the system, insurance. There are other forms, you know, in which an individuals can be healthy, especially when you talk about spiritual health. I believe that plays a role as well. What would you say to, you know, that aspect of self care and with spiritual health?
It's all intertwined.
Hmm.
Sound body, sound mind. You know, these
Hmm.
aren't just sayings; they actually have been shown to be true. And whatever you can do to have a balance in your life, whether it's spirituality or self care or religion, whatever you want to call it, actually promotes a sense of health. And these are things that are documented. So take time for self care, figure out where you're going, because if you don't know where you're going, nowhere is exactly where you're going to get. And just take the time to embrace those things. You know, one of the things that I always do is when I engage in activities, I ask myself the question, to what end? What's going to be accomplished by the things that I do? And that keeps me grounded. It keeps me um, spiritual.
Hmm.
And so, you know, people just need to think about this stuff. You know, I'm really wondering who's going to listen to this, and they're going to have a lot of "oops, I should have had a V8" moments because these are some very simple things that we
Hmm.
just don't value enough to think about. But you really could and should be thinking about these things every single day. It only takes a couple of minutes every time you have breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Are you going to eat the fried selection on the menu, or are you just going to say, you know what? Let me challenge myself to figure out how to make something just as tasty if it's grilled or otherwise prepared.
Hmm.
Do better.
Right, absolutely. And sometimes any given moment, we all need our coat yanked or pulled for that matter. Our health is key to our lifespan. And so sometimes you just need that coattail yanked because you're so busy and you're caught up in your everyday life where you're just making choices subconsciously and not really realizing the time to stop and really think about your health until something drastic happens, such as, the pandemic in which we're in now, or something fails on your body is when that wake up call hits versus prior to. But, I do appreciate the fact of your organization taking more proactive versus reactive approach to healthcare crisis. And, I wish you and your organization much success in reaching out to this because you do have a large task. And so for individuals who may want to know more information about your company or where you'll be set up as far as community involvement, where can they reach you?
You can go to the website, simcoeillinois.com. That's spelled SIMPCO. Illinois is spelled out. Remember the S is silent. Just kidding. .com. And there's contact forms. There's plenty of information that's there. What you will see in the next few weeks, next few months, is a site that is simply going to explode with information, tools, and means in which people can gamify their health. We want you to get interested in it. And by the way, I want to push back on something you said before, or at least enhance what you said before. Don't say at some point in time you need your coattail tugged, because I'm the guy that's been tugging your coattails in the emergency department forever. I want you to figure this out way before I'm the guy that gets to pull on you. So figure it out for yourself. Exactly. Prioritize and value your life on the front end. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, because trust me on this one. Like I said, I trained in Cook County. You don't want to see me because I have skills and I do stuff. And you want to take care of yourself long before you see the types of needles I'm working with. So yes. That doesn't incentivize you. And, by the time you see me, admittedly, you will be a captured audience when you're in the emergency department, because you're thinking about life and death at that point. But we have to know better way earlier in the game, and we simply have to value the investment that we need to make in our health way before it gets to the point to where somebody like me is standing over you, trying to save your life.
Right.
Care enough to do so on the front end.
Well, I'm glad we're meeting under these circumstances and not the other portion of what you do. So I'm grateful for that end. But, one of the things that you said, and we'll wrap up here, a lot of times what we do when it's time to make that decision to do better, live better, the first thing we think about is exercise. But almost it needs to be flipped. You need to eat better. Then equate, add on with the exercising, not the exercising alone. And I think that's what a lot of us drill into, is the exercise of we're staying healthy because we're exercising, when it's both. It's not and or. It's not or, I should say.
Look, stay healthy so you don't have to get healthy. And once again, the way this works is that you nourish your heart. And the heart is it's not all that love stuff, forget all of that. The heart is just an organ that pumps blood around your body, supplying oxygen and nutrients to the rest of your body to keep it functioning. If you nourish it with good food, it's going to be strong all on its own. If you don't nourish it with food, you have to do all that exercise and stuff so that it can pump harder in order to flush out all the garbage that you've been putting in it. Ounce of prevention. People don't like to exercise anyway.
So it makes it easier, right?
It makes it easier.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, seems like no-brainers, right? Everybody can do it, but yet it takes that light bulb moment to, validate what you're thinking sometimes, as I've stated.
So, speaking of spirituality, people always talking about Jesus take the wheel. How about Jesus take the cheeseburger and throw it away?
Absolutely.
Keep blaming God for stuff. Do better for yourself at some level. He'll still be there on the back end.
Empowerment. That's right.
Empowerment. That's right.
Exactly. Great. So, Dr. Sterling, is there any last words that you would like to share with our audience?
I'm rooting for you. This is very important. And, our community is literally dying. It's just that simple. When you see a disease that stresses our system, comes and wipes out over 100,000 Americans, and half of the people being wiped out are communities of color. If that's not a clarion call and a warning sign, I don't know what is. We have to
Exactly.
avoid the urge to just blame people for the circumstance that we in, even when it's true, and say that I'm going to take the bull by the horns, be masters of my own fate, captains of my own soul, and do what's necessary to become stilled so that the next time a stressor comes, my immune system is strong enough to get me over the hump. This is serious. And believe me when I tell you, COVID-19 isn't going anywhere. And it's not going to be the last one of these things that comes up and down the pipe. You know, who knows what's going to happen with climate change. So once again, when America gets a cold, communities of color, especially African Americans, have a stroke, forget the pneumonia. And we just have to know better, do better, be better, or else the consequences are way worse, even worse than what we've been seeing. So get ready. We're here to help.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Dr. Sterling, thank you so much for coming on Eye on Mattison. I really appreciate your time and all of your insightful information that you've shared today. And hopefully someone walks away with a life-changing, altering decision, just, hearing some of your feedback and your insight today. So I do thank you.
Including you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in Eye on Mattison. Again, I am your host, Laverne Murphy. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and get involved. Thank you so much for joining us.